My Son Hunter is a biopic about Hunter Biden, told through his memories and conversations. One of the most initially present things in this film is how little the actor that's supposed to be playing Joe Biden actually looks like him. He doesn't look Delawarean, more akin to Hank from Breaking Bad. They lack the type of corpsey figure that Joe Biden actually is. They blow the load on this hair sniffing joke about a minute into the film, which is oh so disappointing. So here's Hunter Biden, and we are introduced to two things, not only Hunter, but the tracking gimbal shot that will be you will see many times throughout this movie. He really looks like a young Dr. House on a bender. Also kind of has this very jokery moment. I love that they paint him in the red light so you know he's a bad guy. He really looks like every guy at a Turning Point USA rally too, which is very interesting. So, who is Hunter Biden? That's kind of what will be explored and shown here in this scene, another wonderful tracking shot. And this kind of portrays him as like cool party boy, Gatsby-esque figure, which is not necessarily the direction I thought they would go with him. I thought they would be more ridiculing of him initially, which don't you worry will happen. But we will be watching the scene a second time so we can listen to the music because this is the best example of the high quality 16-year-old that did this music because I hope you like Aphex Twin. So after that gnarly beat drop, we get to the question: who is Hunter Biden? The Ballad of Hunter and the idealization of him. So this troubled figure decides he needs to go for a drive, go buy some crack, and he takes his newfound friend Kitty with him. There's some good visual pornography here of Skid Row to, really reinforce that, yeah, liberal cities are bad. Now, I would think that Hunter Biden kind of has a better plug situation than this. He doesn't need to keep going to the same guy who is camping out in his cardboard Skid Row uh, housing operation here. But there is one thing that I think is very true about this interaction, and it is this: always remember to kiss your plug goodbye. But it does pose an interesting question. How are you supposed to represent this man? It is obvious that he's a troubled figure, and I don't think they're necessarily trying to draw empathy from the viewers here, but use this like humanism or humanization of him as a medium to just ridicule him, which seems amoral, but that's besides the point. Like, what is Hunter Biden escaping from? Because they paint it as he's escaping from this like, obscene amount of privilege and this life that he occupies would be enviable, but I don't know. This is like a half decent setup to a story that explores like the distance in between expectation or like just this interesting ballad and incredibly sad story that's like exemplified in this car scene with his dad, which lasts an hour of this film. They're not going to do that. Hunter matches, I think, a lot of the values that are held by the median right leaning younger guy. He makes money, has hookers, parties, but this is passed as a negative value judgment. And that generates some tension, whereas, like, well, if the goal of like accelerated capitalism is to make as much money as you possibly can, fuck the means, then why is Hunter Biden a bad guy? Is it because he is in power? He's not our guy in power. He's not the correct big guy. I think this tension for the Breitbart viewer is very interesting. So this idea of the fail son is very present in this car scene. I think in the way that it's shot, they prop up the Joe Biden character well above Hunter Biden, shoot Hunter Biden almost exclusively downward. That makes him one look smaller and weaker, but also makes him look like a child. And I think this like way they dress him in this little preppy necktie and robe is to exemplify like no, this is just a big kid. This is like a Nantucket kid. And the writing here of Joe Biden is very bad, one, but two, it's also just like him being the big tough dad asshole who's concerned with his political career, and the reflection that Hunter has on him more than like his crack addled son himself is like revealing. And I think that this is the biggest generator of psychic tension in this film. It is the idea that there is a lack in between the projection of how Biden wants his son to turn out, how to operate, how to be in the public light, and then how he actually turns out. And that manifestation is a big proponent of this kind of drug addiction for Hunter Biden. And I don't think the film does a great job of like actually exploring this. I think they generate these faux emotional moments here to make Hunter Biden look like a child, where he's like crying about, oh, why didn't I die? Why didn't I get the brain cancer? Why didn't I die in the car crash?
You know what I think of your brother. No, he wouldn't. And he wouldn't disgrace women, goddammit. It should have been me that got cancer. Come on now, don't say that. Or died in the crash with Mommy. Oh, come on, man, stop. No, Stop it. Bidens don't wallow in self-pity.
Are you crying yet?
Look, I suffered a hell of a lot more than you ever will.
So if they didn't explore the Ballad of Hunter Biden, what did they do in this movie? They basically generated like a clip show. It is largely like a temporal reenactment of Joe Biden in these compromising situations as an expose of how, negative of a figure he is. And I, eh, I don't know. I don't know if I truly love the direction they went with that, because one, it makes the movie pretty uninteresting, but two, like you just get all of these types of shots where you're like in Siberia, which is like the fake
Our story
Ukraine,
starts in the early
and
2000s.
it's just like you get a Peter Dinklage,
That's
like a
when
large
Polish
Peter
started.
Dinklage, not normal
A
size,
Ukrainian
large
oligarch
Peter
and
Dinklage
longtime
guy,
recipient
to come
of
play
Yanukovych's
like, oh, I'm a
governmental
Ukrainian
favors.
energy minister, I do
Zlotchevsky
bad things.
would have-
I thought much
That's
more
when
of the
Polish
film would be
success.
centered around this
A Ukrainian
single
oligarch
Ukraine
and
deal as
longtime
well.
recipient
Like,
of
I think going
Yanukovych's
in depth
governmental
into that
favors.
probably would have made a more
Zlotchevsky would
interesting or ballad-esque exploratory film, but that was not the direction they took. This is the funniest line in the movie.
The shit we have to tolerate. Oh, and one more thing. It's a little off topic, but Epstein didn't kill himself.
Yeah, that sigh is me watching
Could you
this
get me a
fucking
glass of
film.
warm milk, please?
Yes, sir.
So now is a good time to talk about the other main slash relevant character who serves as the emotional outlet in this film and also like an audience stand-in, Kitty, or Grace is her real name. So her role in this film is what I think is the stand-in for like younger millennials or zoomers who are questioning the reality that we occupy. They are potentially questioning the nature of the information that they receive and maybe questioning like larger power structures. She serves as the emotional vehicle for Hunter, prompting him to open up and discuss some of his activities, especially his experience with Bo, which is what is the other kid in this picture that was just shown. So this plot device is also another aspect of the shitty clip show that they're running, as she accompanies him through his memories of a series of foreign deals. Now, a lot of these
Biden! son of Vice President Biden. Welcome. Please.
So, here we're going to be introduced to somebody who lasts about 3 minutes in this movie and somebody I've never actually heard of in real life, whose name's Devin Archer. He looks like a young Tuck Carlson, and Hunter Biden refers to him as being like a member of the family, but I really truly do not know who this guy is, and they don't actually really explain who he is in the movie. He just seems like some type of business guy. I don't know. This is his crime.
To commit security fraud against the Native American tribe of the Oglala Sioux Nation. But he claims he's not a racist.
I mean, I know that I don't run my takes back, but like, oh man, dude, you're in a film. Like, you can learn how to pronounce the name of the fucking tribe. So, back to Grace. She is kind of this liberal stand-in, and she is discovering for the first time that maybe CNN is not telling her the whole truth, and that there are some questions that she has to have answered. And maybe this might be a big...
To commit conspiracy.
So this is Grace in the opening sequence of the movie at the Black Lives Matter protest. And it's her questioning, posting and discerning media about what is actually happening there. There is a surprising amount of like ideology that relates to like what is truth, which is very funny for Breitbart to be making a lot of big T truth claims, especially in wake of them just being who they are. So Grace begins discussing the Uyghur problem in China. The Uyghurs are an ethnically Muslim group in China that is facing discrimination, basically racial wipeout, via work camps and forced and pregnancies and abductions. There's a lot of very basic level human rights atrocities, and she is kind of pseudo blaming Hunter Biden for this because, and this is, I think, a very fictional dealing where he sold some type of facial recognition technology or helped broker the deal to sell that technology that allows China to surveil their citizens, which Grace then thinks is the reason that her family friend, one of the people she met on the missionary, or somebody like her fictional aunt in this case, is then kidnapped and brought into these work camps. Now, this is an interesting point for Breitbart to take because, one, I think this is what allows like the white liberal millennial to identify with the reasons that Hunter Biden and like kind of that sect of the American government would be bad because they're placing minorities in injustice, which is something Grace cares about, as proven by the opening sequence of her being at the Black Lives Matter protests and her interview with the reporters. Like, well, people just want rights. Why can't we just give people rights? And this kind of enemy of an enemy is my friend type of framing is what I think Breitbart is going for when they want to bring these kind of authority questioning millennials and young people over to the right side and not further left. And they do that through the series of stand-ins. So that is like actually an interesting portion of this film, but I am very unconvinced that that is like a real issue for Breitbart based on their intense amount of xenophobia, Islamophobia, xenophobia. There's not a lot of Venn diagram overlap between a Uyghur Muslim and then anybody in fucking like the Breitbart staff. And the only reason I'm talking about Breitbart so much is there's obviously like other conservative media agencies involved in the production of this film, but Breitbart, one, has a really good name, and then two, is like the most recognizable out of these. I don't really know what anybody...
You had everything, Hunter. Everything.
So this framework, I think, is meant to convince the audience that this right-wing safe haven of truth and information is legitimate. And I think they pick a pretty decent story to do it with because, you know, I'm not the biggest truther on these situations, but like, I mean, the Hunter Biden laptop story is like definitely real. And like a lot of this movie is fictionalized and dramatized, and actually dramatized in a pretty shitty way. But it is true that there were all these dealings, and it is true that that information was suppressed. So for somebody like Grace and for like that younger millennial audience, if they, which is an interesting concept, and I'm curious to see how that will play out in like future conservative media, and like if that is their larger strategy, I guess better, more interesting ways of deploying it.
You're not getting the money. Son of a bitch. He got fired.
Quid pro quo with Ukraine. Brilliant strategy. Then accused Trump of making a phone call doing the
Yeah.
exact same thing.
So this movie's about over. There's maybe 3 to 5 minutes left, and thank you so much for watching.
Oh, and one more thing. It's a little off topic, but Epstein didn't.
Emails about his business dealings, described by many intelligence experts as having hallmarks of a foreign disinformation campaign.
And has all the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign. They're part of a Russian disinformation.
In the best piece of visual irony and unintentional laughs in this movie is the hundreds of Russian names that scroll by to the right as they play real news clips about the Hunter Biden laptop story being a Russian hoax and a Russian disinformation, and how it's a piece of propaganda meant to sway the American public, as this movie was literally, as shown by the cast and supporting cast, literally entirely Russian, which I won't make a value judgment on, but I will say is quite suspicious and very funny for them to go so mask off with it and just be like, yeah, everybody who funded and supported this movie was Russian, so what are you going to do about it? Believe CNN? So, yeah, with that, I mean, I'll just let it play out. This Hunter Biden movie was a very interesting watch. I'm glad I dedicated 2 weeks of my life to being mentally prepared to watch it, and then end up just finding a Vimeo link. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. This has been Malone Falian for Fatty Strap. My Instagram is at Pharmatasma with a PH. And yeah, I'll let the rest of this play out in peace. Take care.
Candidate Joe Biden's son is the biological father of an Arkansas woman's child.
I mean, they're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not they're not competition for us. And so I got Ukraine, and I went over